Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and Michigan State scandals. Now, many of you may have heard about the recent scandals surrounding Michigan State University. It's no surprise, though, with Jupiter currently transiting Scorpio, that the truth would be unveiled as far as things of a sexual nature goes. With others, and especially these ones that are very, it seems like that are depraved and lascivious and what have you. Now, I cast a lot of this is based on the solar chart I cast for Michigan State University because the time was not available online, and I used the sunrise time to do it, putting the sun and the ascendant at the same degree. So anyway. And the first thing that stood out to me was that there are 4 planets in that first house in the solar chart in Pisces, intercepted in this chart for Michigan State University. And it's a stellium, and the stellium begins with Mars in Pisces, and it ends with that Neptune in deception and illusion. And starting with Mars in Pisces, a lot of this sexual fantasies. What's interesting, I think a lot of this Pisces intercepted in the first house shows that this university, as seen by others, shown that maybe it's somewhat unclear, enigmatic, nebulous, and mysterious, and we might not really understand the full picture of it. And keep in mind, of course, you have the first house intercepted in Pisces, which means, of course, obviously the 7th house Virgo is intercepted, which can indicate that perhaps those true open adversaries there, where it was difficult maybe seeing the details in them. So I think those are some important things to look at as far as this goes. Now, another thing too is that you look at this, and in that cluster of that Pisces energy, that Mercury, of course, in Pisces is in its fall and detriment, and also intercepted and square Saturn. Now, the square to Saturn, I think, could suggest conflict with communications with authority figures, and it might be due a lot attributed to that Mercury in Pisces vagueness and ambiguity. And really, also in this chart for Michigan State University, Sagittarius falls on the MC. It's on the 10th house cusp. And I think a lot of that could suggest that what me worry image and reputation, so to speak. And the ruler falls in the 12th house of secret sorrows and limitations. So anyway, another thing about this is that transit North Node in Leo is currently in the 6th house in the solar chart for Michigan State University. And now the North Node by transit could reflect issues that have to be confronted. Now, perhaps in this case, this could be over arrogance, a sense of entitlement, and perhaps even narcissistic behavior at the workplace and by employees. Now, what's interesting is transit North Node in Leo is closing in on the university's natal black moon Lilith in Leo, and which indicates to me there may be even darker issues that may have to be addressed sooner than later. And the transit supermoon in Leo is going to fall in the 6th house, 3 degrees from the natal black moon Lilith. This could be perhaps a revelation and unveiling perhaps of others maybe abusing a dominant position at this place and at this workplace, and even maybe dominating others sexually, perhaps even routinely. Remember, the 6th house is the house of daily routine. Now, also perhaps maybe even more employees may be accused of sexual assault, even on minors and children. Remember, Leo is the sign associated with children. Another thing too coming up is that in the near future, the transit sun will be making an applying conjunction to the school's natal Mars on February 21st, and will make its last conjunction aspect to any of the planets in that Pisces stellium on March 6th. It will make that last conjunction, the separating conjunction aspect in that Pisces stellium will be made. The last one will be made on March 6th when transit Sun makes the separating conjunction aspect to the natal Neptune of Michigan State University. So maybe, I think during that time, that's could shine a lot of light on a lot of that Pisces illusion, so to speak. I think the fact you got that Mars and Pisces mixed in there, it's really where a lot of that energy is dissipating, and I think you have a lot of that where maybe people often fantasize and dream about taking that action, so to speak, and they really actually do not. And you have a lot of this deceptive energy in that chart. Once again, you have Pisces intercepted in that first house, and you have 4 planets in Pisces in interception in that first house. And you also have, I mean, Mercury is conjunct Neptune. You have Mercury in Pisces and its fall and detriment, and Mercury in Pisces by itself could be very deceptive in their speech. And then you also have the conjunction from Mercury to Neptune as well. So anyway, and even when you have Mars making the conjunction to Neptune, that could indicate a dissipation or dissolving of that energy and that action-oriented energy. There's a lot of that passive energy in this chart, and I think it really might have something to do astrologically with them being, you know, this some lethargy in terms of maybe taking that action and really doing something about things. So anyway. Now, another thing, though, is we're going to go to Larry Nassar, of course. Many of you may know he was recently sentenced to 40 to 175 years behind bars because he pled guilty to sexually assaulting minors. Now Transit North Node in Leo is in his 12th house of incarceration and imprisonment. It's no surprise he got a magnanimous and very generous prison sentence, and this was something that got a lot of exposure, notoriety, and attention. And also, Transit Jupiter last month in December had made a conjunction to his black moon Lilith in Scorpio. So it's no shocker that perhaps the law caught up with him as far as exposing that lecherous side and sexually deviant behavior, perhaps, and may have been done very surreptitiously being in Scorpio. And he's also going through his Chiron return in Pisces, and Pisces, of course, is the sign associated with imprisonment and incarceration. So a lot of times this Chiron return, I don't think it's always necessarily good. It could be, you know, really could be emphasizing the suffering and the wounds that are associated with this particular, you know, with the placement. And given that I believe, I don't know this 100%, you'd have to check on this, but in his solar chart, likely transit Chiron is in the 8th house of sex right now. So for me, it's kind of the way I see this. This is really maybe, you know, some emotional suffering going on because of these perverse sexual acts he had become involved in, and they're really strongly connected maybe with fulfilling these really warped and depraved sexual fantasies, and now he's facing repercussions because of that. And Pisces, of course, can be associated with sensationalism, so you could do the math in that one. So anyway, now another side to this with astrology and the Michigan State scandals is that a little bit surprised to me that legendary NBA player, I should say former legendary NBA player Magic Johnson has come out and taken at least a somewhat adversarial stance against the university. He is actually calling for termination of people who were there and were cognizant of sexual misconduct but did not act upon it. Now, it's no surprise that Johnson's sun in Leo makes an opposition to the school's sun and, of course, the solar chart ascendant, because, of course, in, you know, the solar sunrise chart, use the sun and the ascendant are at the same sign and degree. So it's not a big shocker. It's not something I'm really flabbergasted or in a state of shock of, that his sun makes the opposition to their natal sun. And really, it's also interesting, too, that Magic Johnson's moon likely makes a conjunction to the university's moon, depending on time of birth. And perhaps that's why he might explain he might feel so emotionally connected to the university. Many of you may have known that he was a prominent basketball player at the university and played for Michigan State, a star player, I believe, and won an NBA title. I believe it was against Indiana State, and Larry Bird, I think, was on that team at the time. So anyway, another thing is that, too, is that when you look at, Magic Johnson, I believe his Mercury is in Leo, and he's not going to obviously pull any punches in terms of communicating about the nefarious activities of the university in a loud, vociferous Leo manner. And another thing, too, is that the transit supermoon in Leo will fall in the school's 6th house and 3 degrees from their natal Black Moon Lilith on January 31st. So I think when you look at that, that tells me that there could be maybe even more of a revelation and unveiling, perhaps, of something dark that I described actually before, that may actually happen in terms of maybe there might be some more, sex with minors or maybe employees there with that sense of entitlement and their arrogance, etc. There might be an unveiling more of those people, and maybe even more people, as I stated before, that might be involved with maybe the sexual, assault of minors, perhaps like Nazar, like Larry Nazar. So it's something to look at, and also maybe even really could also be the revelation, perhaps, of others abusing a dominant position or workers dominating others sexually, maybe even routinely, considering that it is going to fall in the 6th house of daily routine. Now, one last, what I want to talk about, too, is Tom Izzo, who is currently, as many of you may know, the head coach of the men's college basketball team there and at Michigan State. Now, Tom Izzo currently has the transit Jupiter in Scorpio, making a conjunction, or at least close to a conjunction, to his natal Saturn in Scorpio. So perhaps now it could be really, this might be connected maybe with perhaps he's going to have expanded responsibility to digging beyond the superficial and seeing through subterfuge and others. And now it also might be enlarging and expanding maybe feelings of feeling melancholy and maybe enlarging despondency with him at this point in time. And I think at some point in time he will have to probably talk a little bit more and elaborate maybe on something he might know that he might not be necessarily revealing at this particular point in time. Many of you may have known that he had what happened was he had a player that had been accused of punching, and I think he worked kind of like an assistant coach with them or something, and a player perhaps as well. You'd have to look that up to get the full details on it. But this person that was connected with the team apparently had punched a woman that was on a bar stool and was hard enough to knock her off the bar stool. And during that time when he was under, I guess you could say, the investigation for it, and the case was pending or what have you, that Tom Izzo had permitted him to stay with the team at the time. And a lot of people have different perceptions on this, and they might think, well, wasn't this maybe Tom Izzo's way of condoning this in his own subtle way? My feeling is maybe he shouldn't have let him permit to stay with the team at the time, but if he hadn't been convicted, it's not necessarily a cardinal sin on that, in my opinion. He could have done a lot worse things. But anyway, the thing about and another thing too, I noticed, I looked at the progress chart for Michigan State University, and interestingly enough is that the Venus in Virgo makes a tight opposition to Neptune in Pisces in the progress chart for them. And both those planets are at 17 degrees. And of course, as you know, those are critical degrees. So I think this is an indicator, perhaps, if you have the Venus in Virgo, could be that value in what's ethical and scrupulous is opposing Neptune in Pisces, which could be about maybe victims being camouflage. So maybe it's almost like maybe there's a pull right now with this university and really wanting to do the right thing and still wanting to cover up maybe issues perhaps connected with victims. I think that is a possibility right now. And anyway, and last but not least, in that progress chart for this for Michigan State University, Pluto makes a conjunction to the North Node in Taurus. So really, to me, that could suggest perhaps that maybe that, the North Node can be about, I think even a progress chart could be about issues that one may have to confront and address, and this could be over some kind of sexual domination or maybe just issues that are connected, maybe a power and control, and maybe putting too much of that Taurus value in it. And it might be time now where they need to really address this and really look deep into that as far as Michigan State University goes. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and the Michigan State scandals. Stay tuned next time where I'm going to be giving you my take on, it is going to be on the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius on February, I believe it's February 15th, 2018. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.